Chicago. I didn't go to Chicago. Someone stayed around the office. Everyone else went to Chicago. Mike Spiegel, who's Kathy's boyfriend, got beat senseless. Got thrown through windows by cops. It was just like, okay, we came up here to do this, and this is how you respond. So now we realize things are not pretty. It's not going to be good. They're not going to let us march in the streets anymore. And so a group of us, primarily centered in D.C., Ann Arbor, and New York, within SDS, then at the December convention in Ann Arbor, and this later became the heart of the founding members of Weatherman. It was myself and Kathy Spiegel, and then Billy Ayers from Ann Arbor, and Bernadine was from Chicago, and then Jeff Jones, who was my best friend and lived in New York. We wrote this paper, 8 of us, arguing for, we wanted confront them, do a heavy demonstration at the inauguration. SDS called for a heavy demonstration at Nixon's inauguration in '69. And I remember Mark Wright and I were walking around, it was in Ann Arbor, teamed up to going house to house. And I remember I ran into the Niagara region, which is Cornell, these guys from Cornell, who were just the greatest partiers I'd ever met. And I just said, this is great, man, I'm staying here. So they actually became very good friends and are lifelong friends, those Cornell people. But they were considered the right wing of SDS, so it was funny. So when our thing came up, so I started hanging with these guys, and then we did our speeches. When it came time to vote, I remember them holding my arms down. I couldn't even vote for my own. And it was voted down by SDS, but we decided, we were called the Action Faction. That's what everyone called us, because we were eager to fight the pig. So we said, okay, we're going to do it. And then no demonstration up until that point had actually, we had one on an election day. This is when Nancy got ratified. We had one election day which was peaceful. And that's right. I left that key thing out in terms of D.C. That was just a local D.C. thing that they were having them around. And the police came and just wailed on us. And I was fighting with some policeman, and he was wailing at me. And then Nancy came up and bonked him over the head. It was her first act of violence, but it was, and I remember that all of a sudden she was radicalized. So that's when we decided, okay, they're not going to let us march in the streets anymore. They're just going to come and wade into it. Chicago set the tone, that's what's going to happen. So we decided that we were going to go after them over the inauguration. And so we called for a national action. And, the action, we had a number of people there, and it was just, so now we're back up to January '69, the inauguration. So we just went at the police. I mean, we went at them. They had never seen anything like that before. We were small. We were fighting in cadres. We were learning how to fight the police. You go in and you go out. You strike, in groups of 8. We were developing all that. Johnny Lerner, who was in the SDS chapter at DC, and he had a great line. So then we go back to the Lanier house and we'd party the night away.
Yeah.
And John says, I really like it. I hope the struggle remains always at this level. You know, fight the pigs in the daytime, come home, party at night, get up, fight the pigs in the daytime. It got much worse than that, of course, later. So that was it. Now, else came down. She's an LA girl. And then we all went out, and there was people from Williams and people come around, and we were marching, and there was these bunch of crazy guys dressed all in black, charged through the thing and charged through the pig. And I said, those guys are great. I'm going with those guys. Those were the motherfuckers from New York. They got all the way in. Ben got all the way in. You got all the way in to the Pentagon, It was that was really heady. I said, these guys, Sundstrom, John, who had been one of my good friends at Williams, and he was now in New York as a motherfucker, We got in the Pentagon. It was just amazing before they drove us out. It still wasn't just massive violence, but that was clear. I thought, these guys are right.
Yeah.
They're not just sitting there, motherfuckers. They were anarchists. And, that was October '67. That was another radicalizing movement of the Pentagon. So now we're back up to January '69, the inauguration. So we just went at the police. I mean, we went at them. They had never seen anything like that before. We were small. We were fighting in cadres. We were learning how to fight the police. You go in and you go out. You strike, in groups of 8. We were developing all that. Johnny Lerner, who was in the SDS, that was January. So things were really beginning to foment and things were beginning to, there were splits developing within the movement. And we had clearly become a group, Action Faction, that was trying to move the level of struggle along. And we were also very heavily influenced by the Black Panthers, and who were based out here and whom we really didn't know much about except through media thing. But their whole thing is that you take it to it. They, you know, the guns on the state capitol, et cetera, like that. Well, we use them as inspiration that you go after it. And we also felt responsibility as over this time there was developing a group of people. We were trying to articulate, we theorized forever. We were trying to develop a theoretical paper. And it was in June, the National Convention was going to be in Chicago. Now, there had been a group within SDS called Progressive Labor. They called themselves Maoists. They were very, we saw the split in the United States. We saw the primary contradiction in the United States as being race. And that also told it was imperialism with the blacks in the South, imperialism with the Asians, and imperialism too loosely in the South, but race was a primary contradiction, which defined how you organize and define the split. Progressive labor saw the primary contradiction as class, working class, and class. But we pointed out that the white working class was some of the most conservative segment in the United States. So, and essentially, as I'd seen it in the South, the way the white working class was kicked down is they'd always say, you know, you're not making much, but you know, you're making more than that nigger. And how it was used as that. So progressive labor, they organized very hard. They were a very tightly disciplined party. In other words, they were top down. You had to do what people told you to do. They came, and a huge split developed at the convention in Chicago. And those non-progressive labor people, led by Bernardine and Jeff Jones and Mark Rudd, we walked out. And I was actually head of security at that point. And so we just took them all out. And then we set up another convention in another place. Now, within that group, the non-PL group of SDS, there were various different factions, but we were the Action Faction, and then there was, that's what we were called at that point, there was the Revolutionary Youth Movement, which were people who still wanted to organize around working class lines, but were not progressive and still saw race as a primary contradiction in America. And that was Mike Klonsky, who'd been the head of it, and he was based in LA. He had an interesting thing. He was a National Guardsman who got radicalized in the Watts riots and actually put down his gun and went to the other side. And so then we started developing papers. Now,